Hello and welcome to Open Hand Farm. I'm Penny and I am thrilled that you are here. Today I have a Waldorf salad recipe that I want to share with you. I was looking for something to use items that I had in my fridge and decided this was the best option. Now, personally, I'm not much of a Waldorf salad person, but this one really struck my fancy. I saw it on Instagram and decided to give it a try. It's really simple and it is delicious. So let's just get right into it. So we're going to take a cup of walnuts, and I just used a mallet and crushed them up. Now you don't want them in like powder form. You still want to have some chunks of nut. And put those back in the bowl. And then we're going to add 1 cup of pepitas or pumpkin seeds, whatever you want to call them. The recipe calls for these to be raw, but I did not have raw. And so I just used what I had. Now the next thing is to make the syrup that goes over the nuts to make the brittle. We're going to start with 1/4 cup of maple syrup. And to that, we're going to add 2 teaspoons. The recipe calls for extra virgin olive oil, but I've used avocado oil. Then we'll just add 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now this just gets stirred together. And then we're going to pour it over the nut mixture. I put some parchment paper down to keep it from sticking to the pan and just poured it out on the paper, and then I spread it as thin as I could. I didn't want any big clumps or chunks of nuts all laying together. And you can kind of see in the middle, there's a little bit more moisture than the outlying areas, and I was afraid that might be a problem, but it wasn't. Now we're going to bake that at 275 for 35 minutes. And while that is baking, we're going to go ahead and cut up our vegetables and fruit. We'll start with the celery. Now I know that the smallest item that's going to be in the salad is the pomegranate seeds, and I wanted things to be similar in size just because I'm a texture person and I like that. So I did cut my celery pretty small. We need 1 cup of celery. Then we're going to go to our apple. And I just cut around the core instead of coring it. And like the celery, I cut it into about the same size pieces. This, I believe, was a Fuji apple. It doesn't matter what kind of apple, it just says 1 large apple. I'm putting it in that cup just to keep it kind of out of my way, but it actually doesn't have to be a cup of apple. It's just a whole large apple. And I just left the skin on. I didn't see the need to peel it. It just added some extra color and texture. The next item is a cup of seedless grapes cut into halves. But some of these grapes that I had were huge. So because I wanted like sizes, I went ahead and quartered them. And actually some of them were so big, I had to cut them into 6 pieces. They were enormous. And the darker the grape you use, the better. It not only adds more color, but it has more antioxidants and vitamins and is better for you. The next item is 1/2 cup of dried cranberries. These are cranberries that I got from Azure Standard, and I love them. They're just a tad bit tart, but they also are sweet because they have been infused with apple juice. They're not like the ones at the store that have sugar on them. Our last ingredient is 3/4 of a cup of pomegranate seeds, and I just bought a container of them at the store. I did not bother opening a pomegranate. Now we're going to go to making the dressing that goes over this fruit and vegetable mixture. It starts with fresh thyme. When I saw the fresh thyme, I'm like, uh-oh, I didn't buy any fresh thyme, but I don't know if mine is still good. So I was so excited when I went outside and it was still perfectly green and viable. It hadn't frozen or anything, even though we've had some below 20-degree weather. So I was very pleased. I just pulled some out. I didn't know how much I really needed. I probably exceeded the 1 tablespoon that I needed, but that's okay because it tasted so good. Now the base of our dressing is going to be olive oil and yogurt. We're going to use 1/3 of a cup of each of those. I went ahead and put the oil in first. Then I knew that the yogurt would slide right out. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and you'll want to use the kind with the mother so that you get all of the benefits of this. I just kind of incorporate it a little bit before I start adding my spices. Now I will add my supposedly 1 tablespoon of thyme, maybe a little bit more, and my 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard, 1 tablespoon of maple syrup, and 1 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now I will incorporate all of this. It blended together very nicely, and you can see it's kind of a thick texture. Now let's mix it all together. I just poured all the fruit and vegetables into the bowl, and I went ahead and incorporated them into each other before I put the dressing on, and just poured it on there. I have to say, I thought this was too much dressing, but the recipe actually calls for you to cut up a head of romaine lettuce in this as well, but I did not do that. I didn't have romaine, and I had another reason why. I knew that Mark and I were not going to eat all of this in one setting, and I didn't want the greens of the salad mix to go bad, so I just incorporated the dressing into the fruit for now. Now we're going to go over to our cooled walnut pumpkin seed brittle and just start breaking it into small pieces. Now in the middle, you'll see that the syrup is kind of stringing on me because it wasn't quite completely cool like the outer edges were. But once I was able to tear it apart and kind of move it around, it did cool down, and that wasn't an issue anymore. The outsides where it had been really cool, they just broke and snapped right apart. After I had it all broken up, I went back to just make sure I hadn't missed any large pieces. And when it looked about right, I just kind of put it all back into a pile, and then I separated it all into 6 piles, and that's because this salad serves 6, and I wanted to know that everybody was getting all of their sweet, yummy crunchiness on top, because it is so good. You don't want to miss this step. Now let's put these salads together. I decided to just put the greens in the bottom of the bowl This is just a salad mix that we bought at Walmart. And I'm just kind of tearing it up because, again, I don't want huge leaves of lettuce. So now I'm just going to spoon the fruit on top of the lettuce. And I'm trying to kind of dig deep because the dressing does kind of sink to the bottom of the bowl as it drains off of the top fruit. Then I'm going to add my nuts. You guys, this is so good. So good. So at this point, I did go ahead and kind of stir it all together so that my greens also had dressing on them, so it didn't seem to overwhelm it. And it was a great plan. It's a beautiful salad to look at also, with all the colors and then the shiny, glossy nuts on top. So like I said earlier, I decided not to put my lettuce in the salad with the dressing. So when I stored this, I went ahead and put the individual servings of the nut brittle into little baggies, and I put the fruit in its own bowl, and of course the greens were already in their own container. So when I wanted to use it again, I would just take them out and put the salad together in the bowl. Well, I hope that you give this recipe a try because you will not be sorry. I actually used this in the first week of my 3 Rivers Pantry Challenge, and I was able to use it several different times because I stored it individually. So if you're going to use it through a period of time, be sure and separate it and then put it together as needed. Thanks again for watching, and if you liked what you saw here, be sure and subscribe and push that bell so that you'll see when I have other videos out. I have a wide array of video topics, so why don't you stick around and check out any others that might interest you. And until next time, blessings on you and yours.